With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown. Our top stories. ECCB's risk-based supervisory framework ensures financial stability and protects depositors. St. Kitts Nevis Attorney General talks Sustainable Road Safety Initiative. St. Lucia struggles to meet transport emission targets. Guyana government unveils $1.382 trillion budget internationally. Gaza ceasefire to begin on Sunday, January 19th, Qatar says, after Israel approves deal. Now, the details. The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, ECCB, has been actively enforcing a risk-based supervisory framework designed to enhance the stability and soundness of financial institutions across the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, ECCU. The initiative includes thorough examinations of licensed financial institutions to assess their financial health and compliance with regulatory requirements. Leanne Irish-Wade, Deputy Director of the Banking Supervisory Unit, highlighted the framework's benefits, including its forward-looking approach to allow for early intervention strategies to face potential risks.
The first one being, it is forward-looking, and that means that it looks at current and future risk, allowing them to look at early intervention and remediation strategies for our licensed financial institutions. Secondly, it focuses on what matters, and that is the areas of higher risk that pose a threat to the financial stability of our licensed financial institutions. And thirdly, it assesses the adequacy of the risk management practices and corporate governance oversight of senior management and the board of directors.
This proactive approach ensures that the ECCB focuses resources on higher risk areas that could threaten stability while continuously evaluating financial institutions' risk management practices and corporate governance arrangements. The result is a strengthened financial sector that protects depositors and fosters a secure banking environment. As the ECCB continues to prioritize the safety and soundness of the financial system, implementing the risk-based supervisory framework is vital in safeguarding the people's interests across the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. On January 17, 2025, Attorney General the Honorable Garth Wilkin appeared on WINN's Island Tea to discuss the recently launched Interministerial Sustainable Road Safety Project, SRSP. This initiative addresses the alarming traffic problems and fatalities that have plagued the nation recently. Attorney General Wilkin emphasized the project's purpose: to inform the public about improving road safety following a particularly tragic year for traffic incidents.
And then last year was, I think, 13 or 14. The police are confirming the final figure, and then one already for this year.
He noted, referencing the total fatalities in that period, while confirming that statisticians are finalizing the numbers. Between 2019 and 2023, the country recorded a significant number of fatalities, with a total of 19 deaths attributed to road accidents over these 5 years.
So it's a serious problem, and we are trying to resolve it permanently.
Wilkin asserted, reflecting on the urgent need for a comprehensive strategy to mitigate these incidents. In detailing the gravity of the situation, Wilkin shared specific statistics from Bastyr, revealing that from 2019 to 2023, there were 3,867 recorded traffic accidents in the area alone. The Old Road District followed with 611 accidents, highlighting the small nation's soaring rate of road traffic incidents.
We shouldn't be having that in a small country like ours, but there are three factors that the police, the traffic department, licensing authority have indicated are causing this spiking numbers.
He remarked, calling for immediate action and awareness from the public. The first factor was speed, as recklessness persists despite warnings.
To decide to drive above the speed limit is a human decision.
The second cause is the use of mobile phones while driving, which continues to distract operators. Lastly, he noted an exponential increase in the number of vehicles on the road, which has nearly doubled since the PB vehicle registration series launched about 10 years ago. The Attorney General made it clear that these accidents stem from individual choices.
Human, if you choose to overtake on a corner, it's a human decision. If you choose to run a red light, it's a human decision. It has nothing to do with the government. Yep. It's a human decision. And as you can see, there are a lot more causing death by dangerous driving charges that are happening now because of human decision.
He reiterated, emphasizing personal accountability for road safety. He stated that significant legal changes, including increased charges for dangerous driving, are being implemented in response to these patterns of recklessness. In response to the host's questions about penalties for dangerous driving, Wilkin mentioned the potential for jail sentences in severe cases.
I know there's someone that's serving prison right now for causing death by dangerous driving. I think the person had pleaded guilty and got jail because the judge said in the judgment, you have taken a life by your action, your recklessness, and we cannot just give you a slap on the wrist for that.
He noted, highlighting the seriousness of such offenses. Wilkin indicated that while the maximum sentence for dangerous driving could reach up to 5 years, permanent revocation of driving licenses is not guaranteed according to existing legislation. Instead, he expressed the need to reassess laws surrounding driving violations, particularly those resulting in fatalities. Wilkin urged citizens to take ownership of their driving behavior and understand its broader implications, especially given St. Kitts and Nevis's unique road conditions. Currently, the Sustainable Road Safety Project emphasizes data analysis and community involvement. Wilkin invites feedback from the public on traffic safety measures. Suggestions could be sent to roadsafety@gov.kn to contribute to community-oriented solutions tailored to local conditions. The SRSP aims not only for immediate solutions such as increased signage and speed bumps in high-risk zones, but also for long-term goals, including data-driven proposals to enhance the infrastructural safety of roads for every user. The initiative has been structured for over 5 years to ensure sustainable and effective change. Wilkin expressed his commitment to a safer driving culture in St. Kitts and Nevis.
We need to be, this project is not a government project. It is initiated by government, but it's about all of us. All of us have to make a decision as to what we want the road culture to be like in St. Kitts and Nevis. Do we want to go out on the road and feel unsafe? I do. I drive defensively. I drive as if the other person cannot drive, especially at roundabouts, because nobody seems to want to go online, Google highway code, and see how to use a roundabout.
The SRSP represents a unified effort towards cultivating a responsible road culture that will ultimately lead to safer roads and reduced fatalities in the coming years.
The focus should now shift towards reducing the consumption of sugary beverages, and one effective way to discourage their use is by increasing the taxes. This perspective was shared by Dr. Reginald O'Loughlin, Public Relations Officer of the St. Kitts Diabetes Association, in light of the rising cases of diabetes in the Federation.
Remember, we are not legislators, we are just an NGO. We can make suggestions, we can make recommendations, and over the years, since I've been associated with the entity, we have had interactions with different cabinets where we had suggested, coming from suggestions at the international level, looking at SSBs, sugar sweetened beverages. Some countries like Barbados have pushed ahead and have introduced legislation. In England, we have made the suggestion, but of course that is still left to the legislators to do that.
He emphasizes similar measures could be helpful in St. Kitts and Nevis.
We feel that could be of help, if you can beat them, you join them. That's what it said. So if you can get people to take the advice and cut down on the ingestion and the consumption of sugar sweetened beverages and other sweetened stuff, then you put a heavier tax, so at least we have some money put aside to be able to treat when those complications, come down on us.
The medical practitioner who has been involved with the association for many years pointed out that while efforts have been made to advocate for changes, success has been limited. Nonetheless, he affirms the association's commitment to engaging with legislators to address the ongoing diabetes problem. Dr. O'Loughlin further emphasized the need to use the revenues from such taxes to support diabetes treatment, including costly services such as retinopathy care.
That is a suggestion that we hope to continue pushing, and once we get the opportunity to interact with the legislators, with those who make the laws, we would hopefully continue to make that recommendation, so that at least that may, cause us to have some money put aside for the treatment aspect of it. Dialysis is very expensive. cataract surgery and eye surgery, retinopathy treatment, heart disease treatment. All of those things are really expensive, you see, and these are some of the major complications that we experience that we would observe with people with diabetes not well controlled. So having that little piggy bank put aside coming out of the taxation on sugar sweetened beverages would make a lot of sense to us. But like I say, we're not legislators, and we can only hope and we can only suggest. And like I said, that is definitely on the table at the international level, at the regional level. Some have gone ahead, and we are hoping that we may follow suit at some stage sooner rather than later.
In regional news, St. Lucia struggles to meet transport emission targets, DBS St. Lucia reports.
St. Lucia's transportation sector will not meet any of its targets for greenhouse gas emission reduction, as there are too many vehicles on the island's roads, with too few being electric. That is according to Climate Analytics, a company that is working on the National Assessment of Greenhouse Gas Emitting Sectors, collecting data, and doing new inventory for the submission of St. Lucia's Nationally Determined Contribution, NDC 3.0.
The transport sector has problems, so there are too many vehicles on the island and too few of them are electric. That means that this sector is not going to meet any targets anytime soon, unfortunately. But that is going to be worked on as well. And then the others we are looking at are forestry. Your forests are still beautiful and doing well. The emissions from that sector are still negative. And we are also looking at ozone depleting substances, which is also a very strong climate pollutant, and will devise plans from the government to reduce those emissions, so that sector is going well too.
Nevertheless, Dr. Sandit says that the energy sector is beginning to do well, as there is a reduction in gas emissions due to higher uptake of renewable energy options. In fact, he says that the new reduction target might reach somewhere between 7 and 46% compared to the target set in the 2015 NDC document. The island's third NDC includes energy and transportation, just like the last NDC submitted in 2020. This time around, forest and industry, specifically the cooling sector, were added to the NDC. The focus on gas emissions in the cooling sector is mainly on gases emitted by air conditioning units.
So we're looking at an even more ambitious NDC 3.0, estimated at $247 million across those sectors. And we are having our target to be up to 2035, and of course submitting this this year. Indeed, our deadline is the 10th of February. So we have with us our Minister, Honorable Sean Edward, who will be facilitating the process for us in getting this to Cabinet and getting it approved on time to allow for us to submit it to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the UNFCCC.
Minister for Sustainable Development, Sean Edward, says that he is pleased with the efforts being put together to handle the island's NDC. When it comes to the implementation of the NDC, Edward says that the Department of Sustainable Development has a very capable and efficient team of officers.
We have a very well-trained team, competent officers who have not just demonstrated their worth nationally, but we've been able to lead on so many aspects of environmental management regionally and nationally. Several of our officers have led programs for AOSIS, which is the Organization of Small Island States, and I'm quite pleased and quite satisfied that whatever we have been able to put on paper will be executed in a timely manner. If you have followed the budget processes in recent times, you would have heard me mention in Parliament that the capital budget of the Department of Sustainable Development is largely funded by grants from international organizations. And not only do they provide money, but they also provide technical support by deploying some of their personnel to St. Lucia to help us meet some of the targets we've set ourselves and to execute the projects that we've been able to conceive.
Though St. Lucia is not a big contributor to climate change, the island feels the physical and economic brunt of climate change. Minister Edwards says that the nation still has a responsibility to lend to global efforts in reversing the effects of climate change. NDC 3.0 is estimated at $247 million across all sectors outlined in the NDC. The validation of the island's third NDC exercise took place on Friday, 17th January 2025. For the DBS News World, Miriam Montoot reporting.
Guyana government unveils $1.382 trillion budget. Guyana News source has the details.
In a budget presentation that went on for more than 4 hours, Minister responsible for Finance, Dr. Ashley Singh, unveiled a massive $1.382 trillion national budget, which is 20.6% larger than last year's budget. He said the budget will be fully financed with no new taxes, but with a heavy dependence on funds from the oil sector. The budget will see hundreds of billions of dollars being injected into the education, health, public infrastructure, and other key sectors. With regards to the measures with effect from the 1st of January 2025, the income tax threshold will be increased from $100,000 to $130,000, the finance minister announced. He said that move to further raise the income tax threshold will put an additional $8.5 billion into the pockets of Guyanese workers.
I now wish, Mr. Speaker, to announce that with effect year of income 2025, this year, the income tax threshold will be increased to $130,000 monthly. Mr. Speaker, it might escape the notice of our colleagues on that side of the House, but what this constitutes us in one term in office, doubling the income tax threshold from $65,000 a month to $130,000 a month. Mr. Speaker, this will result in an additional $8.5 billion of disposable income for workers and the removal of 22,000 persons from the tax net.
Additionally, the government has also taken a decision to reduce the personal income tax rate of 28% to 25% for employed and self-employed workers. Minister Singh said this measure will increase the disposable income of more than 100,000 of taxpayers and is estimated to put about $3.6 billion back into the hands of Guyanese workers. The finance minister also announced a one-off cash grant of $100,000 for newborn babies.
Mr. Speaker, in order to support the development and well-being of one of our most precious and valuable population groups, newborn babies, who will constitute the future of Guyana, our government will provide a one-off grant of $100,000 for every newborn baby born in Guyana to a Guyanese mother, starting from 2025.
2025 will also see the old age pension being increased to $41,000, public assistance to $22,000, and the Because We Care cash grant to $50,000. The finance minister said the move to increase the old age pension will benefit more than 76,000 pensioners. In the case of the Because We Care cash grant, Minister Singh told the Assembly that over 205,000 school children stand to benefit.
Mr. Speaker, in keeping with our manifesto promise, I now wish to announce on behalf of this People's Progressive Party civic government a further increase of the Because We Care cash grant to $50,000, benefiting over 205,000 children across public and private schools, recalling that we extended to the parents of children going to public schools and placing in the hands of these parents an additional $2 billion to be spent on their children. Mr. Speaker, together with the Because We Care cash grant, the Because We Care cash grant and the uniform voucher allowance will result in parents of these 205,000 school children each receiving $55,000 per child.
Other measures include the continued distribution of the $100,000 cash grant, free university education, the reduction of electricity costs by 50% when the gas to energy project comes on stream, the abolition of bridge tolls when the new Demerara Bridge is completed, the containing of the cost of fuel, the reduction in freight charges, the continuation of the part-time job program, the issuance of a $10,000 universal healthcare voucher, the adjustments of taxes for children, the removal of VAT on agriculture machinery, and the removal of VAT on backup generators. The finance minister said the government will also continue steps that are geared towards easing the cost of living woes.
We now bring you these international reports.
The ceasefire in Gaza is due to begin in under 24 hours. Mediators in Qatar have announced it will take effect from 08:30 a.m. Sunday in Gaza. That's 06:30 GMT. The Qatar Foreign Ministry made the announcement on social media, saying the parties had agreed that the ceasefire would begin on Sunday morning, also warning inhabitants to take precaution, exercise the utmost caution and wait for directions from official sources. After hours of discussion, the Israeli cabinet gave final approval to the ceasefire and hostage release deal with Hamas. The first hostages are due to be released as early as Sunday under the first phase of the agreement. Meanwhile, sirens have been heard across central Israel this morning, with reports of explosions over Jerusalem. The Israeli military says it intercepted a missile launched from Yemen. Let's get the latest with our correspondent John Donison, who is in Jerusalem. John, we'll talk about those sirens in just a moment. First of all, bring us up to date on the hostage ceasefire deal and the details that we do have about how it will come into effect tomorrow.
Well, the struggle to get this deal done went late into the night. The Israeli government actually broke with protocol and worked into the Jewish Sabbath to get this deal finally approved. It wasn't without controversy. Two ministers, one has said he's going to resign in protest against the deal because he says it lets Hamas off the hook, and another has said he will resign in 6 weeks' time if the war doesn't resume. But the deal is going to go ahead. Now, there is some confusion about when it's going to start. The Qataris, as you say, saying it will start at 8:30 local time, the ceasefire tomorrow morning. We've not had that confirmed from either the Israelis or the Palestinian side, but it will happen on Sunday, and we will see the first 3 Israeli hostages freed in exchange for Palestinian prisoners.
It seems that some of the detail is still yet to be ironed out, John. I'm reading on the Reuters news agency that Hamas has said that the mechanism of the release of Israeli hostages that it holds in Gaza will depend on the number of Palestinian prisoners Israel would free. So still some negotiation, it would seem.
It seems so, but it's going to be pretty difficult to stop it happening now. We understand the Israeli hostages, those initial 3, will first be handed over to the Red Cross and then brought out of Gaza and taken to hospital for medical checkups. We've had the list of Palestinian names of the prisoners who are going to be freed in exchange, and some of them pretty high profile. There's a chap called Zakaria Zubaydah. He is a former leader of the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade militant group in Jenin in the West Bank. He was jailed for murder, attempted murder, planting explosives, including one attack that killed 6 Israelis back in 2002. So there is probably going to be some wrangling of how this all proceeds, but we are just waiting now until it goes ahead.
Let's get a better understanding of the humanitarian situation on the ground in Gaza. Here's Rosalia Bolan, a spokesperson from the UN children's charity UNICEF, who is based in Mawasi Rafah in southern Gaza.
Humanitarian situation remains extremely dire. Families here are experiencing just utter deprivation for over a year now. They're in need of everything. They don't have shelter protecting them from the elements. They live in makeshift tents or in schools that have been turned into shelters that are very crowded. I visited one a couple of weeks ago. 8,000 people in a single school. You had over 25 people in a classroom. There was a chickenpox outbreak. So very unsanitary conditions. People also experience lacks of food. There's severe hunger that continues continues to plague really the entirety of the Gaza Strip. Diseases are rampant. If you fall ill, if you have a pre-existing medical condition, it's hard to get the medical care that you need. I met with a teenage boy who has diabetes. He struggles because when he does get his hands on insulin, he doesn't have a refrigerator in his tent to keep the insulin cooled. So children are cold, they're ill, they're wet, they're not really well equipped to face the winter. I see lots of children walking around in summer clothes, lots of children walking around barefoot, which is a problem also because of the rubble everywhere and the solid waste. I see children scavenging through that, looking for things to eat, for plastic scraps to strengthen their tents. Lots of children queuing with jerry cans to fetch water because access to clean water remains an issue. So a very, very dire situation here in Gaza that threatens the lives of children. It's not just the bombs and the bullets, it's also these living conditions. Well, we are extremely, extremely hopeful that this ceasefire is going to last, not just that it takes effect tomorrow, but it's also critical that it will last. In the first place, just to put an end to the ever-rising death toll. Since the announcement of the ceasefire, attacks have continued unabated, and there's 30 children that have been reported killed since the announcement of the deal. So that has to stop. And simultaneously, we indeed need aid, but also commercial supplies to be scaled up to address the suffering of families in Gaza. The halt in fighting by itself, on its own, will not necessarily automatically address this suffering because the needs are so tremendously high. And if I may point out, it's not just aid that is needed, it's supplies of the commercial sector that have to come into Gaza at scale as well. Humanitarian actors like UNICEF, we bring in very specialized supplies, for instance, when it comes to hunger and malnutrition. For the tens of thousands of children who suffer of acute malnutrition here in Gaza, we bring in very specialized supplies, nutritional supplements, things like plumpy nuts, therapeutic food, high energy biscuits. But ultimately what their families need is to be able to access some form of market economy where they can purchase dairy products, meat, fish, vegetables, fruit, so they can have a diversified and healthy family dinner. So that has to go hand in hand, really.
Like most U.S. businessmen, Joe Ferrara has been sizing up Donald Trump's plans for the economy. As one of just a few remaining U.S.-based clothing manufacturers, he thinks tariffs on imports would be a good fit. Trump has promised 10 to 20% tariffs on all global goods and 60% on Chinese ones.
Tariffs are a very powerful tool. When we manufacture a product, we are competing against imports. And just for context, $360 billion in retail sales for apparel, only 3% of that are clothes made here in the United States.
Businesses that rely more heavily on imports have more concerns. They'll have to absorb the cost of the tariffs or pass them on to the consumer. The National Retail Federation warns blanket tariffs on a limitless range of consumer goods will be inflationary.
Wall Street is one thing, but Main Street another altogether. A policy that includes tax cuts and tariffs, more business deregulation, and less government spending could very well be a boon for the wealthiest Americans. But economists say it may come at the expense of the poorest.
They'll raise inflation. They will put a lot of people out of work. They will benefit a tiny percentage of the American population. And more than half of all American workers will suffer greatly.
Trump's stated plan to deport thousands of illegal immigrants could have a ripple effect on the economy and increase labor costs. But when it comes to tariffs, Ferrara argues that in many cases, retailers could and should absorb the costs.
We've estimated that with 20% tariffs, our workforce can triple. We have 115 workers. That's adding over 230 workers to the economy. And that's just one player. Multiply that by thousands and you have millions of jobs.
The idea is to boost U.S. manufacturing. The question, will working class Americans have to pay the price? Kristen Salumi, Al Jazeera, New York.
In summer 2021, unprecedented nationwide anti-government protests rocked Cuba. Hundreds of people were jailed. This week, Cuba and the United States announced a surprise deal, a prisoner release in exchange for sanctions relief. The Biden administration will take Cuba off its state sponsors of terrorism list. The measure has scared international banks away from the island, further clogging up its moribund economy.
The Spanish can counterattack.
The administration never provided evidence to support its terror claim.
That Cuba supported that 40 years ago, I think is undeniable. That Cuba supports that sort of thing today is absurd. Cuba has neither the means to do such a thing, nor any inclination to do so. And that's why we see no evidence provided by the United States at any stage.
The quid pro quo? Havana will release more than 500 prisoners, many of whom were involved in the protests. Prominent dissident José Daniel Ferrer was released on Thursday.
I'll continue to do what I've always done, fight for freedom, democracy and respect for the human rights of my people.
Idalis's son was sentenced for 12 years for throwing stones and bottles at police.
Why do I think he's a political prisoner? Because they sentenced him to so many years in prison and for sedition.
The protests were in large part a result of unprecedented economic warfare, which helped create the scarcities people were protesting against. Elizabeth Leon has 3 sons in prison. She sees no future for them in Cuba, even if they are released. Still, she's glad the embargo will be softened.
We're the ones that go hungry because of the blockade, not the government.
The Biden administration argued that new repression in Cuba meant it couldn't reverse Trump-era sanctions. In fact, the decision to stick with Trump policy was taken before Biden was even sworn in as president. As prisoners finally return home, stricken families get emotional. Around a dozen people in this neighborhood have been released. They're too scared to speak, but that doesn't stop them partying.
I've hardly slept the last few days, but thank God, today, my son is finally back home.
Havana will hope this deal draws a line under its handling of these protests. But with the Trump administration about to take power, analysts say these last-minute measures are likely to be quickly reversed. They won't actually improve the lot of these long-suffering people. Ed Augustin, Al Jazeera, Havana.
From Donald Trump's return to the White House to soaring energy prices in the Eurozone, these are the stories to watch in business and finance in the coming week. Investors everywhere are watching how Donald Trump will kick off his second term as U.S. president on Monday. U.S. markets are closed for Martin Luther King Jr. Day, so investors may not fully react until Tuesday. Any early moves on tariffs will be of particular focus. Investors counting on a solid 2025 for U.S. corporate profits to boost stocks will get a fuller picture as a wide swath of corporate America is set to post results for the last quarter of 2024. Earnings from Netflix, Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, and American Express are expected. Trump is expected to shape momentum in the wars raging in Ukraine and the Middle East. The Israel-Hamas ceasefire has given hope for stabilization, which is lifting the region's bonds and stocks and could shape oil markets. Peace in Ukraine might take longer than the day one fix Trump pledged, but markets are gearing up for how this will reshape the region. The incoming U.S. president is set to virtually address leaders and CEOs who are scheduled to gather in Davos from Monday. Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the United States has become Europe's biggest supplier of natural gas in liquefied form and a major source of crude oil. With the euro hitting 14-month lows against the dollar, weakness in the currency is a double headache. Upcoming December final inflation numbers for the Eurozone are unlikely to capture those price increases, meaning a possible nasty surprise later on.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were: ECCB's risk-based supervisory framework ensures financial stability and protects depositors. St. Kitts Nevis Attorney General talks Sustainable Road Safety Initiative. St. Lucia struggles to meet transport emission targets. Guyana government unveils $1.382 trillion budget internationally. Gaza ceasefire to begin on Sunday, January 19th, Qatar says, after Israel approves deal. Thank you for listening.